Okie doke. Hello, ISwearSheLook18. Careful. Anyways, your question is, how am I supposed to win that game, and what are the proper ways to carry my team as Caston? Okie doke. So I've gone ahead and watched about up till 25 minutes ish. Might not get through the whole replay since it is longer, but my key takeaways from this game is that first off, you don't want to give too much to your allies, especially as Caston. How the earlier parts of this lane play out is you end up contesting this scuttle with Viego, and that really takes away from your own lane. And you want to play a way more selfish, building up more resources as Caston. Especially as in the early game, if things go wrong, they just keep going wrong. So it's better to be slow and steady rather than trying to get some cheap wins like here and there. So given that we're into Zed, this is kind of how the lane plays out. It would be better just to play this more defensive since Zed is just stronger than Caston early. Instead of starting Dark Steel, just go for Doran Shield. Makes it so that Zed can't kill you. And no matter how crazy things get, you're still going to be able to stabilize with Doran Shield. Whereas with Dark Steel, you're really trying to like make it or break it. Okey-doke. So we get some good trades onto him, evening the lane out a little bit. And then when Viego goes to contest this Scuttle Crab, even though we have Zed pushed in, we're a Cassidon. There's not much that can really happen. So we have the wave pushed in, but then Udyr starts kiting to the left, and this is going to stall things out. And then Zed can enter even though we had him pushed in. We end up taking a good amount of damage, and now our lane is just overall in a worse spot. Whereas if we're just standing still mid, continuing to get the golden XP, things are going to make a lot more sense, and it's just not that great to entertain something like this. So then you try to enter the fight again, and so basically step one, don't like entertain this. Don't even show up for the Scuttle Crab because you're Caston, unless the Udyr is like 200 HP and like in this quadrant of the river. It's not really our issue as a Caston mid. We're a scaling champion, one of the hardest like spiking champions once we get to our power spike. Level 4 is not our power spike, so don't even bother, because then it puts us in a position to be attacked from multiple angles. So the Zed gets onto us. The Zed gets onto us. We trade our damage, and then after that, we're basically out of the fight. Viego is going to kill the Zed, and then we can't kill the Udyr in a million years, and we can't kill the Shin in a million years. So after you spend everything, back off and then start recalling, because your goal should be to get back to lane as fast as possible. We have enough for tier, and that's good enough. So recall up here, and then get back to lane faster. Because doing this just shows like you're not really watching the fight, and it entertains too much like variance to where if the enemy shows up, where they have enemies coming, then it's too much. It's way too much. So during all of this wave is happening. We're missing a good amount of golden XP. And as Cassidon, experience is basically your most important stat. So in the early game, don't entertain things like that. Make sure that you're really on a path, or you're really just playing for your own lane rather than trying to help with those sort of fights. Best case scenario, your Viego goes for that, dies, and then, well, not dies, but let's say like he goes for that, and the Udyr's very low, and then we're standing on the outskirts, and then we can show up to basically clean up the kill. Setting up our Viego to get a kill doesn't help us in the context of solo queue, because we want the power on our champion. We want things to be going for us, you know? If that guy gets a kill, we can't control his champion. We still managed to salvage the lane though, so we're laning, we're taking trades, and then we get the kill onto Zed. He really messes that up, and then Udyr comes in. And then you kind of overchase it since they have the Shin ult. Luckily enough, you can get away with your ult, but you should know that the Shin ult's coming, and your main priority should have been to crash that wave. Because it's up to the enemy to beat you at that point. You have the winning position, but you keep over chasing to attack the enemy champion. Right, so we have 50 HP. It's up to Viego to kill Udyr from this position. Again, our goal, push in the wave. because we want to crash this wave and then reset so that we can come back into the lane with more items, and then Zed will miss out on golden XP. But you chase for the kill, they have the Shin ult, and then things are like kind of screwed. Even though we get away and live, it's like the misplay is still there. You want to be pushing the wave, and then if Udyr comes to try to stop you to do that, that sets up the Viego easier for a kill than if you and Viego are chasing the Udyr into his red side. And then maybe if that Shin ult comes down, if Udyr's already dedicated himself, say right here, with you and Viego there, then it's going to be much easier to maybe eat through the Shin ult, for example, rather than if you're chasing the enemy into their jungle. Seeker's Arm Guard, Amp Tome, Tier. Seeker's Arm Guard isn't that required. You're going to be delaying your build path into Everfrost. Don't get me wrong, it's obviously good against Zed. But the Ruby Crystal from Kindle Gem is going to be doing about the same in most cases. And delaying the Everfrost is delaying a power spike in which you can really start attacking the enemy. So let's say you complete Everfrost around level 9, 10, 11-ish. Then whenever you start roaming to side lanes, that Everfrost gives you another tool to set up for damage onto the enemy. Makes the kills a lot more likely, because you do have to stall out in the earlier parts of the game to actually get your damage off on the enemy. So a failed roam. So yeah, the first step is get more resources for yourself, stop playing more for your allies. The next step is whenever these team fights starts. So whenever the team fight starts, there's a lot of situations where you have like bad target selection. Even macro-wise, the target selection is kind of bad because you have to pay attention to the lanes that you're going to and the champions that you can kill. So if I'm Kassadin and I'm looking at this team, I know the champions I want to kill is Zed, Twitch, and then Maokai. All very easy champions for Zed to kill. Maybe not Zed, or for Kassadin. Maybe not Zed if things are even or if he's ahead, but Twitch and Maokai very, very easily. If we look at bot lane, we also have a Nautilus to set us up for those kills on those champions, whereas if we go top lane, a fed Shin and a fed Udyr, even like just a normal Udyr, like just tanky champions, it's going to basically take us too long, and it's going to be really hard to find spots to do so. In this case, we're roaming top lane. Your goal should be for the wave. We ult in, get stunned, eat the wave, and then try to get out of there. And then we're kind of cut off on our path back. If I saw this, my whole priority would be walking this way so that maybe I can run into Maokai. If I run into Maokai and then Zed pass down this way, then he's dead. So, but if we go into the Zed, Udyr, Shin, you know, not worth our time. The Q onto the Zed's not good, but then we end up getting the Maokai. Doke. So now we're pretty fed. We have the Everfrost, we have the Seeker's Arm Guard, we have the Tier, and here's what we're talking about: the target selection. So we're trying to set up maybe for the dragon fight, or we're just kind of fighting in the river, and then we're focusing the Maokai, and then you do it too fast. The ult in is just too much. At the start of this, the mechanics could also be better, but you want to be playing in a more defensive way. So the enemy's already got the dragon and they're backing off, but you have to know that they have their allies around. So Twitch, Udyr, Shin, Zed, you know, where are they at? We know where Maokai's at. So we ult over, and then E, Everfrost, Q, and then W. You want to auto attack and then W. And then if you're going for this, just ignite the Maokai. That's what the ignite is for. You don't want to save it for like anything other than just getting the kills. And especially if you're presented this like on a silver platter as Kassadin in the early game, take it and get out. You don't want to like double down in a spot like this. You want to take the kill and then swap with your bot lane so that you start side laning and they start mid laning. That's going to make the map state better. And then also that's how you want to play out the fight. So we ult in, another auto attack, we could still just ignite, and then we get taunted and it's going to be too much. So the second ult is just too much of a commitment. Every time you ult in, you have to think like, is it too much, or like, is it going to put you in a spot to be attacked? And you have to know like why you basically have to look before you leap. And then this just kind of continues to happen despite us getting this early lead. So from this this lane state, you could still swap with bot lane. That should be your goal. And in the mid game, you just end up continuing to go mid way too much, and then that puts not only Jinx in a bad spot, but also yourself. If you're mid lane, your allies are probably there, you're getting less XP, the enemy is going to be outnumbering you, fights that Kassadin never wants to take. The Maokai might W into you and die randomly, but you can't really rely on that. So the ARAM pays this time, and then we recall, and now look at the map. Right, our bot lane's dead, and Shin's pushing this out. It's totally fine to catch the one wave mid here, and that's what we end up doing. So we go mid, and then we get the wave. Now immediately, you should start going bot lane, because this wave's coming in, and then Jinx is respawning. So let Jinx take the mid lane, and then you go bot lane, and you start side laning for a considerable amount of time, because our goal is to get to level 16. We get to level 16, GG, game over. And it's up to the enemy to stop us. You don't have to keep trying to shove like your power into them right now. You want to keep powering up, and then if the enemy doesn't stop you, the game ends for them. But if we stay mid lane, it gets awkward for Jinx. So now Jinx is pathing mid. Here's this big wave coming in bot. We ult into what we don't even know what's there. So yeah, we stick around mid, the enemy shows up with the numbers advantage, and we get taken out. And then this is 8 times speed, so you can see that's a lot of time of us being dead. Doke. Once again, we're mid lane, could still be bot lane, still a big wave there. We could even go top lane if Nar's going bot. We're outnumbered, the enemy CCs us, and we're dead in the mid lane once again. So in the mid game, really look for the side lane. So early game, play for your lane. Not only your lane, but more so your resources. So your HP, your mana, your gold, your gold and your experience over time. So staying around the minion wave, even if you're not getting the CS, getting the XP is worth it for Kassadin and say your hardest matchups. In the mid game, start side laning. The game won't make sense if you keep ARAMing on Kassadin in the mid game. And then in the late game, it comes back to the target selection part where how we play out the fights. So let's see. Let's go ahead and skip to... Okay, let's watch this fight actually. Another one's coming up. We're never farming, always fighting. So, right. This fight is happening. Baron's happening. Shin misses the taunt. And then we have to ult out. Everfrost. And then it's just going to be too much damage because we're running into a bunch of tanks. We're running into a bunch of tanks without our teammates. With Kassadin, it's up to the Viego and the Jinx to kill the tanks. If they're not there, sucks. And then the price we pay for that, all these minions. All of these minions. And then you do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you miss out on 4 waves every single death. And then it's really going to add up, and then we're never going to get to level 16, and we can never really... It's not that we never end up to level 16, but we don't end up at level 16 at a fast enough pace to where we can just basically solve the game, Kassadin is really like an Exodia of League of Legends, if you get him to that point. So we're just focusing the Udyr in front, which is fine. Here, you should be trying to get behind. You don't want to be entertaining what's right here because your team's going to take out the Maokai and the Shin. It's up to you to try to get behind to get onto the Twitch because we can kind of decipher that the Twitch is somewhere around here. If we use the Fog of War, he's all the way over here. Regardless, he's going to be behind the enemy team. So you can keep ulting this way and then try to get behind. Instead of trying to just clean up this Maokai kill, because if things are more even, whenever you ult onto that Maokai, the same way the Shin taunted us here in the prior fight, that's how the fight can go wrong. Okay, ult onto the Twitch. Instantly killed the Zed. Kidok, so we win the fight. What even happens? Finally, we're in a side lane. And then as we're in a side lane, we don't have TP and the enemy starts Baron. So the one time we side lane, it's the wrong time. If we have Ignite and our top laner has TP, it's up to Gnar to go bot and we can go top. And then you want to push out like 1 or 2 waves around this area and then you could go mid. Because usually pushing down through here is too much when Baron's up. Okay, so we lose Baron. A fight breaks out and we try to get behind them. Once again, just not the targets for us. Udyr's 2 Fed, Force of Nature, and then Shin also having Force of Nature. So yeah, we're totally screwed in this spot, trying to get damage off. These spots, it's up to the enemy to win. It's not up to you to kill them. So your goal should be to defend the turret and play in a defensive way. Okay, so we ult in onto the Shin. If you're going to ult in, ult on the caster minions to kill them. And then they don't have a minion wave. Because if you ult onto the Shin, that's like 100 damage. This guy doesn't care. Killing the minions, they start tanking the turret guaranteed. And then it's also just basically your only play. The way you play around tanks usually, like if you can't kill them yourself, is like you want to hit the minions instead. Generally. Not every single time, but generally. Okay, let's skip to these last 2 fights here. Finally, we're level 16. 31 minutes for level 16. We can be level 16 around like 26 minutes-ish. If everything's going well. Okay, we're just missing lethal. We get it, and then we're trying to get onto the Twitch here. Okay. He goes up. We ult. Oh no, you try to read where the Twitch would be, and then we guess wrong, and then we have to use the ults. We have to use the ult again, but it works out. Okay. Enemy doesn't have enough damage to take us out. We bought Frozen Heart for what? Udyr and Shin are dealing primarily magic damage. The Twitch damage doesn't matter so much for us because we're going to be on top of him or not in range at all. So yeah, this Frozen Heart is a bit too much. It's also not going to help us carry where our teammates are like so, they're just not in it, you know? Okay, let's skip to this last fight. Okay, you guys get Baron. Gnar goes down. Okay, flash stun. We ult away. Zed ult, and then stopwatch into dodging the Q. Udyr getting some damage off, stunning us again, and then Twitch going in, but we ult onto the Zed and we don't have the Zhonya's. And then he just has enough damage to take us out and no one can get on the Twitch. If you just walk past the Zed there, and then you can get onto the Twitch. So that's a rough one. Okay, so back to the original question. How am I supposed to win this game? The way you win it is through playing the mid game a lot better. So side laning, building up resources for yourself, and then taking over, once you're strong, taking fights as much as you can. So until then, you don't have, like, you want to be showing up to the fights that happen. Levels like 11 to 15, and then level 16, like, you can just start looking to take the fights on your own terms because you're so strong. What comes with side laning as well is you're going to have an item advantage around the time that you would be there. So you could have Everfrost, Seraphs, Zhonya's, Boots Lucidity, maybe a Void Staff, maybe a Cosmic Drive, maybe you know, whatever, a Death Cap, components of Death Cap. You know, you have a lot of options. And if the enemy doesn't have enough like levels, you know, enough defensive stats, then you can just start taking over at that stage. But you really just overdo it trying to attack on cooldown regardless of like what's happening. So the main things that I think you should look to improve on, or at least like change, is in the early game, play for your own lane. In the mid game, start side laning, swap with your bot, or top lane, most likely swap with your bot lane. Mid game, and then late game, you probably swap to top lane if you're running Ignite and your top laner's running TP. And then that's going to give you enough gold and experience to start carrying the game. And then once you're strong, pay attention to like the targets that you're hitting in fights, because it's very important. In this case, ulting onto the Shin Udyr ever in this game is just a waste of our time. We have to play fights a lot differently. You want to start, whenever you're against a lot of tanks, you want to be flanking, getting onto the ADC that way, and not entertaining the enemy front line, because the way that you play out a lot of the fights is just like you're acting like a tank for your team practically. You're just standing in front and then letting your ADC hit the tanks in front of you, which you just don't have to do that. Your Nautilus can do that. Your Gnar can do that. So you want to be the one staying in the fog of war and then flanking from behind to get onto the enemy carries. So yeah, hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on the Pro Guides website, and I'll get back to you when I can. Alrighty, peace.